Welcome to Biz Bites, brought to you by Com Together, helping businesses like yours build their brand through telling amazing stories to engage and grow audiences on multiple platforms. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Biz Bites. And I have an amazing guest with me today. I've got to know this guest a little bit over the last couple of years, and she's back from jet setting around the world, and I'm so glad she's taking some time to be on the program. Rebecca, hello, and welcome to Biz Bites.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Yes, I have spent a few weeks travelling recently, but as we were discussing earlier, unfortunately, being in business sometimes means you have to play and work at the same time, and the same is with travel and work at the same time. Getting that balance is interesting, isn't it?
It absolutely is. But I think before we go on and explore some of that further, why don't you introduce yourself properly and tell everyone about the amazing businesses that you have?
Hi, my name's Rebecca Cribbin. I'm a human, a mother, a partner, a business owner, and a boss, amongst other things, of course. And over the last 12 years, my team and I have looked after 1,200 short-term rentals. So we look after, I suppose you would call them Airbnbs, but I don't want to call them Airbnbs. We call them short-term rentals for owners who don't want to get involved. So we do everything right from the listing on the various websites like Airbnb, Booking.com and Stays, and we look after the cleaning, the bookings, the money, and manage everything and take all the stress away from a property investor that wants to short-term rent their property. So over those 12 years, Anthony, we've looked after 500,000 guests and helped them create fabulous holiday memories. And we've taken over $100 million worth of bookings. So it's been a bit of an interesting ride for me. I've been lucky enough to build a profitable business. And after those 12 years now, I'm just venturing in, which I think you and I discussed, into the training and coaching environment to share some of the lessons that I've learned the hard way, many of them, over the last 12 years with fellow short-term rental managers and also fellow business owners. So that's where I'm at this moment in time, and that's what I've done over the last 12 years. I've also raised two beautiful children who are now adults, and managed to do that and run a business at the same time with some sort of work-life balance.
No mean feat, and those numbers are staggering in terms of the businesses and the people that you've accommodated over that extended period of time. And I guess the interesting thing about all of that, of course, is that 20 plus years ago, this wasn't even a possibility of a business, really, was it? Because it's, the likes of Airbnb have completely transformed the way we think about using our houses.
Yeah, they sure have. And obviously, one of the biggest challenges we've got moving forward in the industry is regulation, because we're being seen, or the short-term rental properties are being seen as competitors to residential rentals, and the rental crisis obviously is relevant and existing at this moment in time. So we're seeing that that's probably what's going to provide the biggest challenge to the industry moving forward. And I don't have the answers, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with Airbnb and how they can help us as an industry provide holiday destinations for and short-term accommodation, of course, are both required, not only just to holiday, but to stay when you're working or stay when you're in between houses or the like, and ensure that the Australian people have somewhere to live. It's an interesting challenge.
It absolutely is. It's and I think it's just made us rethink the way we would, go and take accommodation, the way we would use our accommodation. And you're right, it's all levels of government are starting to crack down on this to some extent, aren't they? And I think there's a bunch of issues. It's consideration for neighbours as well, with people coming and going, and That's that sense of security as well. Is also an
We
issue.
don't have a lot of problems with that, which is great. I think people have really have come a long way. A few years ago, we used to have some troubles with noisy neighbours, but I guess your guest can be just as noisy as your neighbour if you get a bad neighbour, and they stay forever, and guests only stay for a couple of days. So there's some balance to be found in that as well. as well.
Isn't it? I mean, I think that's the thing too, though, isn't it? That people that are looking for accommodation, and it's not always about looking for it's probably rarely looking about it as a place as used as a party house. Most of the time people are looking as a destination, isn't it, for something very particular. I think if it's a party, if they're looking for a party house, then they're actually looking for something quite different.
Yeah, they are. And don't get me wrong, we get the very occasional one, but over those years we've probably taken 65,000 bookings, and I think there's been maybe 3 to 5 parties where we've had to shut it down. And now people are noisy, though, don't get me wrong. They're excited, they're away, they're meeting up with friends they haven't seen for a while. They sit on the back deck and they talk until 1 o'clock in the morning. But it's, all the stories about people destroying houses are very few and far between. And in fact, as I said, with 65,000 bookings, we've never had a house destroyed, touch wood.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting about what you do is you're dealing with people all the time. And people that are in more often than not going away for a reason that is fun. Makes it an interesting. I mean, yes, I suppose there's.
And we don't want to be the fun police. We don't want to be the fun police.
Exactly, and it's really, and I think that there'd be barely anyone around these days who's not tried, an Airbnb at least, and
sure.
And I think that's the difference, isn't it? It's people are becoming more respectful and understanding of it. Because I personally remember before Airbnb was a thing. I can't think of how many years ago this was now. It's probably about, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, maybe even a bit more. We were going to Paris for a wedding, and we were looking for accommodation, and we found it online, and we stayed in someone's apartment. We stayed in what now would be considered an Airbnb style accommodation. And we had a fabulous time. And it was, if I think back on it, there was nothing that they did that is different to what is being done today. But it was quite rare to do that. And it was because we were going for a wedding and there wasn't really hotels in the areas that we needed to stay and everything. That was the option that we had. And we had a fabulous time. And I think that's the thing is it changes the way you holiday, because you're staying you're often staying in areas that are not where hotels are, and you feel like a local, particularly if you're going overseas or into areas that you haven't been before.
Yeah, you can live like a local, and you've got your own kitchen. Numerous people can stay together. We've got some properties, many properties that sleep 10, 12, 14, 16, 18 people. And you just can't create the same sort of atmosphere and the same sort of experience if you're staying in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hotel rooms. It's just not the same. So, I love what I do because we're helping people create memories that they'll have forever. And in my opinion, a holiday in a short-term rental has the potential to create better memories than a holiday in a hotel.
Absolutely, I absolutely hear you, and it is a very different kind of experience, and it's not for everybody, but it certainly is one that has a lot of benefits. I know, even just over the beginning of the year period, we went away and stayed in someone's house that had a pool and all of the accommodation that we needed in an area that we wanted to be in. which was quite different to the people that were staying in hotels and living that hotel lifestyle. We had the whole place to ourselves, which was fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. Yep. But I still stay in hotels. There's appropriate times for that as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. There definitely is. It's not like hotels are disappearing. There's plenty of room for both in the market.
I agree with you.
I wanted to ask you though about where it all began, even before this business and into the training and other things, because you've had sort of a really interesting career progression. So take me back to, I guess, the young Rebecca. Where was it? Where was the where was it that you imagined your career going in the early days, and how was that journey?
I did a Bachelor of Business on the advice of my father that being in business was a good thing. So, and he was a businessman, and I did that. And after I left university, which surprisingly I got through without failing anything because I did have a lot of fun. Um, I sometimes
As you
reflect on
do.
it and
Come on,
think, how did I
that's
do
what
that?
university's for.
Absolutely. Yeah, so my advice to anyone that's listening that is, at university, enjoy it while it lasts because it's the best time of your life. And so I left uni and I got into finance and telecommunications. So I worked in corporate, and that's a good background and a good lesson too that I can reflect on, is to have, the experience of working in big corporate environments. I worked in sales and then in customer service and then moved into the call center environment. So, from a telesales or telemarketing and customer service perspective in both finance and telecommunications. Um, and then I did that and moved to England actually and worked in England for a while, again in corporate. And then I jumped into a consulting role in call centres. So going in and reviewing was sort of the time when call centres were transitioning from customer service centres into more technology based businesses, where the businesses started to be run more by technology than they ever had before, and they required different skill sets from the teams that worked within them, to shore up the fact that they were using the technology to the best of their ability and keeping costs where they needed to be. So, and then I've had a baby, and that sort of changed my life.
As it
And
does.
from that, yeah, as it does. But I still wanted to work and I still wanted to have a career. But I decided that the career in corporate with a baby just wasn't for me. And I returned to Australia with my 1-year-old, and I went to work in the family business. So, and that was car dealerships, funnily
Oh,
enough. So, I worked in and was the general manager for our family car dealership where we sold new and used cars in the Holden, Nissan, Mitsubishi, and Suzuki franchise environment. And that was an interesting ride for, I think, 5 or 6 years. And then I stepped one rung only up the ladder from a car dealer to a real estate agent, from the bottom to the second bottom, I believe, as far as reputation was concerned. I don't know, nobody likes a car dealer and they don't like real estate agents either, or they didn't. I think the market, the perception is changing. And when we sold our car dealership, so I've done a few business sales, um, sold the car dealership and then moved into real estate, and then sold a real estate agency and moved into full-time short-term rental management. So that the transitions happened, and when we sold the car dealership, I had no idea what I was going to do, and I had small children, very small children, and someone said to me, well, why don't you start a real estate business? And I thought, well, okay, I can sell houses. I'd never sold a house in my life. And so I set that up and we sold, and then we sold properties, and then we got into renting properties, just normal standard permanent residential rental. And then someone came into my office one day, Anthony, and said, I want to buy a house and I don't want to rent it out permanently because I want to use it once a month myself for the weekend. Can you help me? And I looked at my team and I thought, actually, we can. So I said, yes, of course we can. And from there, we built every single process, first on paper and then with technology. And of course, as you said earlier on, the industry has changed so much over those sort of 12 years or 13 years since we listed our first short-term rental. We've been through branding changes. We've been through, obviously, team changes. I've got 2 people that are still with me that were with me 13 years ago,
Wow.
which is pretty amazing. And I've got a good solid crew of stayers, and then the ones that come and go, which, is just part and parcel of running a business. So now here I am 12 years down the track. I've got a grandchild on the way, which is exciting for me and our family.
Very exciting.
And the world keeps moving on, doesn't it?
It does, and it's
Yeah.
amazing how much you've covered over that career, and been so driven to do that and make those like, there are a few people that sell their business successfully, and very few that will do it 3 times as you've done it,
Yep.
and build, and what's more, keep going on to building new businesses all the time. Where does that drive come from? And what did your dad do? What was his business?
Mm, He was in the car industry for most of his adult life. The drive, I don't know, it's innate. And I sometimes think about that question, Anthony. Why do I continue to need to find new challenges and keep myself entertained? Um, and, there's this little monkey on the shoulder that says to me, just like, give it up. Like, semi-retire, do lunch with the girls, um, sell out and do nothing for a while. And I can never quite do it. I've tried a few times, and I have never got to the point where I've actually done it. I've tried to do it, but I've never done it. So I think it comes from wanting to be independent, and wanting to not be reliant on anybody, or, you know, for what I want, and having, you know, I have expensive taste, so I have to keep working because I like nice things and I like to live in a nice house, and that's kept me motivated. And it's also really important to me to set my family up for a future that is as easy as possible.
Mm,
And whilst I don't run myself into the ground anymore, but I still work hard. But I want intergenerational wealth is probably my goal now. It was to provide myself with what I want. But, I was saying to someone yesterday, I had some dinner with some friends, and I said, I probably got to the point in my life where if I want something, I can have it. You know, I'm
yep.
not, I'm not buying an aeroplane or a helicopter, but if I want to go to Europe like I just did, and I want to fly business class, I can. So now I'm at a point where, okay, why am I still doing this when, if I sold my business, I could pretty much retire? I think I'd be bored, number one. That's probably number two. Number one is I want to create intergenerational wealth. And, I don't want to spend the kids' inheritance. Like I say to my dad, spend the kids' inheritance, but I don't want to do that. So, and I'd be bored. But then, I've just gone 1 year over the big 50. And, at some point, there has to come a time when I, you know, start to think about not working so hard, and maybe having a grandchild will make that change for me, because I'd like
Yeah.
to be there, come home from school and they come to, I'm going to be called Gigi, I hope. Although I guess he'll decide, we're having a little boy, he'll decide what he wants to call me. But I've said to my daughter, I'll poke him in the eye if he doesn't call me Gigi, because there's no way I'm a grandma or a nana.
Is it funny then? These names. My kids are a long way from having children, but we've had those discussions. What are you going to get called? No one. We haven't settled yet. I'm way too old to be, way too young, I should say, to be called grandpa. And I think that's because also when you
that's
think
what
about
I
your
said
own,
too.
You think about your
That's what I
own
said too.
grandparents.
And
It's
I
not
thought
that.
my grandparents were so old, didn't you?
Ah,
I thought my
look,
grandparents were so old, and now I'm
and
like offended if this little bugger tells me that I'm old. I'm just going to be like, no, I'm not.
it's funny, isn't it? We just have that whole different sense of age as we grow up. It just you
Everyone
don't
was
think,
old.
yeah, you don't, you kind of you remember, landmark birthdays for your parents, and you think, oh well, that's a long way off, and suddenly you're there and they're at the next landmark. So
Yes,
it's
indeed.
I think those things do have a huge impact on us. And I think definitely, I mean, having a grandchild coming into your life is going to naturally make you want to give up some time. And I think that's the critical part, is particularly as a serial entrepreneur, as if that's the best term for you, is that there's a point where bringing other people in to try and run more of the business so you can have those opportunities. I think that's the key, isn't it? To be able to know that on any given day, if you're called on for duties with the grandchild, then you want to be able to be there. You don't want to be you don't want to be out have to say no. And I think
And
that's
it's been, the decision's been made for me, and how
absolutely.
that's lovely. That's a lovely thing to think of, because making the decision yourself is probably, would have delayed it. So it's been made for me, and that's my plan, is to work out how to exactly make that happen, Anthony. That that
And
work
I
life
think
balance thing.
that whole sense of purpose that drives you, and you talked about intergenerational wealth, and family obviously is critically important to you as well. And I think it's really interesting, because I speak to so many business owners and leaders, and they're not as many that are in touch with their purpose as you would think. And a lot of them have just found they've naturally gone across to where they are, and they're doing their job, and they're making some money along the way, but they're not as driven. And I think what's really interesting is, as you said, you had many opportunities that you could have walked away, and walked away comfortably. I should add, and yet keep coming back for more. And even as you talked about earlier, now you're really building another business on top of it around the training area, because I think that's the other thing to point out to listeners, is that your business has become so successful that you're a go-to person for other people in similar areas that are coming and asking for your advice, hence the training business, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you know what? Further to that, Anthony, and I don't know whether you and I really spoke about it, but it's morphed. The training and coaching business has morphed into something else that I'm really passionate about, which is health and wellness and mindfulness in business. Because when I reflect on my business and my career as an entrepreneur and a woman and a mother and a business person, I mean, I don't think that I'm any different from any bloke, really. But I think that, and I look around me, the focus needs to be on our team and their wellness and their mindfulness in order to get the best out of them. So the training business, yes, part of it is going to focus on helping short-term rental managers be more productive, more profitable, and have more fun. But we're also building training programs all online to help business owners and entrepreneurs help their team to be well and focused on health and themselves, and the business in order to create a well business, because I think businesses are sick as well, and unhealthy because their teams are sick and unhealthy and not mindful and not focused on themselves. So it's sort of morphed into, so we have the business called Holiday Rental Experts, but we're also creating a business called Your Well Business, which is helping your business be well through your team and being well. So I don't think I told you that. So
No, and
that's another one.
I love that, and the mind's ticking over, because one of the interesting things, over the last few years is obviously the world's undergone huge changes, and businesses have changed, and this balance between working in the office and working at home has been discussed a lot. I've heard it put, the theory is that it's a 3-2 split is the ideal, that 3 days in the office, 2 days at home is an ideal split. What's really interesting as well, and this has come from a personal experience, where taking yourself out of what is the norm, whether it is at home or in the office, has a huge impact on you. And I know personally, and you know that I've done this, that I have moved out of Sydney and spending half of my time on the Central Coast, where we have a house now. And I am talking to you, and I look out the window at this beautiful bush and greenery, and I know that I am a completely different person here to what I am in Sydney. And taking that mindset out into those different areas just is huge. And I think there is an opportunity as well, mixing the two businesses that you've got, because I can see plenty of people and plenty of businesses where this idea of, why don't you go and spend 1 or 2 days or 5 days, once a month, once a quarter, whatever it is, and go and work somewhere different. Because even if we're working at home, there is still, you create a space, you fall into a routine. It's not the same as being able to actually take yourself out and be in a completely different environment.
And you know what? It's not overly expensive to stay at a holiday rental, short-term rental, somewhere away from where you are or where you live or where you work. And people are doing it. I do it in Europe. I go, in October, I'm going to a conference in the biggest short-term rental conference, managers conference in the world. It's in Orlando in Florida. And there'll be perhaps 3,000 short-term rental managers there. And then there's another conference, which is the women's conference 6 weeks later. And I'm like, do I fly to America, stay a week, 10 days, fly home for 3 weeks, and then go back for another 10 days? I'm terrible. I get terrible jet lag, and I hate flying, so I don't do well. And then I thought, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. Even though I'm going to be a grandma, I'm going to go for 7 weeks, and I'm going to rent an apartment in Miami, which I love. And I'm going to work from Miami for 3 or 4 weeks because I can. Right. And I encourage people to step out of their comfort zone and have faith in the fact that their team are disciplined because they are passionate about the business that they work at, and free people up to do this. And if they do, then I think that longevity of the team and the ability for businesses to be able to successfully grow will improve, because the team members will have been given the opportunity to do something regularly that is exciting and motivating, and maybe even put a title on it, which is rejuvenate, refresh, and come back feeling recharged, because it does that to me. I get the time to go away and actually think when there's not people talking to me all day, every day.
Taking the time to do something different and in a different place can just add huge amounts of value to it. I know last week, I had to knock off some videos that I needed to record. And I actually blocked out a couple of hours in the day, stood in the garden with my tripod and recorded a whole bunch of videos. And it was fantastic because it was just, there I was outside in this beautiful area, enjoying what is my garden, and still getting some work done, but being completely out of where, I spent the rest of the week in Sydney, which is kind of trapped in an office. It's not a terrible office. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not, but it is, you feel kind of trapped in there. And being able to remove yourself just makes a huge difference. So I think this is this business I can see is going to take off for you as well. Just so you're not busy at all, just to have two businesses that are going gangbusters. That's just what.
You know what the best part of it is, and this is great for entrepreneurs and the like, is that we're doing the training differently from everybody else on a subscription-based program. So we've got we've built like 80 training programs, and every 6 months you choose the 20 or the 30 that you want to be available to your team, and then they're just available for the 6 months. And then the next 6 months you choose another 20 or 30 programs that you want to be available, so people can pick and mix the training that they want for their team and not have to pay for it all up front, which can be very expensive.
Absolutely. What a great idea. I think we could talk for hours, and we probably better need to wrap up the podcast, and I'm sure I'll have you back again. But I'm just I think that the businesses that you've got, it's such an interesting journey how you've gone along the way. And I love the fact that you've been dealing with people all along, even when it was back in the telemarketing days, it was a people focused. Cars is people focused, real estate is people focused. You've got these new two businesses, or one that's been around for a little while and the new one, that are both also very much about people focus. And I love the fact that that's been such a great focus for you, and it's a focus for you personally in with the family as well. So it does all come together beautifully. And I know as well that we've got we'll have information about how to get in touch with you alongside the show notes of the podcast. And I know you've got a book as well that's in the mix there that I've been lucky enough to read an advanced copy of. So which is fantastic.
And the second one that's just come out as well, Anthony, that I've been a co-author in. So again, in the short-term rental realm. So we can make those links in Amazon available to people if they'd like to read about short-term rentals and thinking about getting involved or just interested.
It's fantastic. And I think for people listening in, certainly if you need someone to give you some advice on how to do it successfully, and whether you decide to do it yourself or whether you ask for Rebecca to take it on board, the books of, certainly the book that I've read is fantastic, and it's a really great guide for people to understand how it can be done, and be done simply by someone who's done it for many, many, many people over a long period of time. So congratulations on all of the business, on the forthcoming grandchild, so much going on for you. But thank you so much for being a great guest on Biz Bites.
My pleasure, Anthony. Thank you so much for hosting me.
Biz Bites is brought to you by Together for all your marketing needs, so you can build your brand, engage audiences on multiple platforms. Go to comtogether.com.au, follow the links to book an appointment for a free consultation.